Let's continue our set of lectures, and today will be last lecture about cell injury. And this lecture is one of the shortest lectures in this semester. It is lecture about cellular aging. So how cellular aging is going on. So let's see it. So, cellular aging. Individuals age because their cells age. Public attention on the aging process has traditionally focused on its cosmetic manifestation. Aging has important health consequences because age is one of the strongest independent risk factors for many chronic diseases such as cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and ischemic heart disease. Um, Most striking discoveries about cellular aging is that is not simply a consequence of cells running out of steam, but in fact is regulated by a limited number of genes and signaling pathways that are evolutionarily conserved from yeast to mammalians. I mean. Okay. So what is a cellular aging? So actually, why cellular aging happens? So it's a progressive decline in the lifespan and functional activity of cells. So for example, it's accumulation of mutations in DNA. I said to you that every cell division is a danger of of DNA damaging. Variety of metabolic insults over time may result in damage to nuclear and mitochondrial DNA. Reactive oxygen species also can damage DNA. So still joining, yeah. 20 minutes passed and still joining. Reactive oxygen species induced by toxins and radiation exposure contribute to DNA damage, as we discussed before. Yeah, and in cases when cells are not died because of it, not apoptotically died, so DNA has damaged, and chronically these damages are collected inside the cell, and finally. So a huge amount of them cause the changes of metabolism of the cell and final death of the cell due to aging. That's one of events of aging. And second one is related to DNA damage. It's caused by decreased cellular replication. Normal cells other than stem cells have a limited capacity for replication. So stem cells has no restrictions in replication. So that's a point we discussed here, that stem cells they have specific enzyme known as telomerase. And telomerase is an enzyme which increases the amount of the size of telomeres in the ends of chromosomes, which allows them to replicate constantly without interruption for a long time. But when cells became non-stem cells, they can undergo only few replication cycles, and we have and due to this, here. Due to this, they became arrested in terminal non-dividing state. So sometimes it's okay. For example, in skeletal muscles, in heart muscles, and in nerve cells, neurons, this replication level is decreased, and this is normal. It's G0 phase for them, and constantly continue in this G0 phase. But some cells should be divided every single time, and decreased rate of their replication causing the tissue injury and cell metabolic activities loss. So, replicative senescence occurs in aging cells because of progressive shortening of telomeres, which ultimately results in cell cycle arrest. That's what I want to explain. Once again, what are telomeres? Are short, repeated sequences of DNA present at the ends of chromosomes that are important for ensuring the complete replication of chromosome ends and for protecting the ends from fusion and degradation. Telomeric DNA also binds proteins that shield it, preventing activation of a DNA damage response. When somatic cells replicate, a small section of telomeres is not duplicated and telomeres become progressively shortened. As they shorten, the ends of chromosome cannot be protected and are sensed in cells as broken DNA, which signals cell cycle arrests. Telomere length is maintained by nucleotide addition mediated by enzyme called telomerase. As I said you right now, and we discussed in previous in one of the first lectures. Telomerase is a specialized RNA protein complex that uses its own RNA as a template for adding nucleotide to the ends of chromosomes. Telomerase is expressed in germ cells and is present at low levels in stem cells, but absent in most somatic cells. So that most of somatic cells are unable for replication. Immature somatic cells age, their telomeres become shorter and they exit the cell cycle, resulting in inability to generate new cells to replace damaged ones. Conversely, in immortalized cancer cells, telomerase is usually reactivated and telomere length is stabilized, allowing the cells to proliferate indefinitely. This is discussed in later topics. We'll discuss it in tumor topic. Okay. Then abnormalities in telomere maintenance have been implicated in many diseases such as aplastic anemia. You remember we discussed. No, we didn't discuss, but we will discuss it in the next semester. And other cytopenias, so decreased levels of cell level, especially in blood. And we can find it out so by a few symptoms like premature graying of hair, skin pigment, and nail abnormalities, pulmonary and liver fibrosis, and in other cases it causes the cellular aging. Then next type of aging of cell which causes the aging, it is defective protein homeostasis. Defective protein homeostasis caused by decreased protein synthesis in one way, and secondly, it's strain of proteins. So proteins are not replaced with the new produced proteins in ribosomes. And due to this protein, collected more misfolded proteins, and you remember it causing the apoptosis in other ways. So it causes the lack of functioning of these proteins, lack of functioning of enzymes inside the cell, and of course it leads to cell death too. There has been great interest in defining biochemical signaling pathways that counteract the aging process, and not only because of their obvious therapeutic potential, but also because elucidating these pathways might tell us about the mechanisms that cause aging. And one of the best research in this field is calorie restriction. So actually calorie restriction is the only confirmed study about the decrease of cellular aging. We don't know typical physiology of this process. So why decreasing of calorie intake causes the increase of cell life, but somehow it is regulated. So, among the biochemical alterations associated with calorie restriction that have been described as playing a role in counteracting the aging process is reduced activation of insulin-like growth factor receptor signaling, which involves a downstream network of kinases and transcription factors. Reduced insulin growth factor 1 insulin-like growth factor 1 signaling leads to lower rates of cell growth and metabolism and possibly reduced errors in DNA replication, better DNA repair, and improved protein homeostasis. Calorie restriction also serves to improve immunity. All of this inhibit aging. So of course not full calorie restriction we need, so just we have research on mice and decreased amount of food. So we have two groups. So one group has no restrictions in food, other group has restricted food. We just check the calorie of the food intake, giving them only necessary for life food for them, and it came that mice prolong their life in 1.5 times. 1.5 times. That's why people don't eat too much. So eat only necessary for you food, necessary amount. Might be it is related with the pathogenesis of obesity. Yeah, obviously we know that patients with obesity, they live less time. They don't have proper immunity response to any injuries, and as practitioner doctor, I want to say to you that patients with obesity, they suffer with coronavirus much harder than other patients, and they have much larger effects of coronavirus than patients with normal body weight. And one of more events which causes the aging of cells is the persistent inflammation. So during our life, we have a lot of inflammatory disorders. So starting from wound healing process with bacteria, might be some chronic diseases like might be chronic kidney inflammation, so which is known as chronic pyelonephritis. Might be some other cases, a lot of different cases, different disorders, chronic inflammation disorders might happen, might cause the chronic changes. So clinical observation and epidemiologic studies have shown that physical activity and, as mentioned previously, calorie restriction slows the aging process, whereas stresses, perhaps acting via increased production of glucocorticoids, accelerate aging. The precise mechanism underlying these effects remain to be defined, and for now we all remain vulnerable to these ravages of age. So let's talk about summaries. So actually a lecture is going to stop. Results from a combination of multiple progressive cellular alterations include accumulation of DNA, damage and mutations, replicative senescence, reduced capacity of cells to divide secondary to progressive shortening of chromosomal ends, telomeres, then defective protein homeostasis, loss of normal proteins and accumulation of misfolded proteins. And aging is exacerbated by chronic diseases, especially those associated with prolonged inflammation and by stress, and is slowed down by calorie restriction and exercise. So, and the rest of the things which are discussed here, they are about general ideas. So, in conclusion to this part, what we're gonna say? So, cell died due to different reasons. And they are died in two main ways. It's necrosis and apoptosis. Mechanism of necrosis is varied depending on different injury, but most commonly it's caused by ATP deprivation, decrease of ATP production levels, and inability to maintain homeostasis inside the cell. This causes necrosis. But in apoptosis, it's preventive death. So when our cell is when our cell can form we don't use them. So if we cause the exogenous pathway, or maybe cell is so damaged inside that we can't afford to keep the cell inside our cells, inside our body. So and cells commit suicide. This is apoptosis. So that's two main things. And as more and usually it should be in normal level. Yeah. So rate of cell producing should be similar to rate of cell death. But when cell deaths are amount of cell death is larger than cell aging, is cell renewal, so we gradually dying. So, but actually, one point I want to mention, so which you used to forget, we have it's never death of illness. So some doctors say to you that, oh, she or he died because of age. So we have no age disease. Age is not disease. Age is just a factor which increased number of age is just number which shows us that we have potential injury due to this, but it's not pathology. Aging is not pathology. And now we have a lot of studies by which we want to prolong our lives, and that don't treat your elder elder relatives and your elder patients, like they are not going to live longer, so we don't care. Yeah, no. Keep in mind that you can save them, because we can. So almost every patient might be saved if you properly understand pathophysiology, and you know how and you know types of treatment. So that's why never give up in treating your patients. So everything depends on you. Okay, this set of lecture is over. As I said you in beginning, so this lecture is going to be shortest lecture in this semester. So that's why I'll check your attendance right now.